Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Artenders. This is Danny Lavelle, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mac Welch.
That is me.
And we do this podcast in order to observe, learn, and kind of take away different pieces of art, different pieces of medium, and, like I said, learn something from them. And this week, I chose the movie titled The Florida Project, directed and also written by Sean Baker. And it is a movie about, I guess, just a mother and her daughter living in this cheap motel in Orlando, in Kissimmee to be more specific, near Disney World. And it's more of like little mini vignettes. There is a sort of overtying story. But this movie, instead of taking, like the choice of one thorough plot line, it's just like pieces here and there, and there's still like an overarching plot, but it's different, and it's, I think, one of the most unique pieces that we've seen for this podcast so far, as well as I also have a difficult time articulating what exactly I think about this film, but I want to get your take on that, Mac. What was your first impressions after viewing this film?
Well, similar to you, there was a difficulty that I had just understanding what the film was about. Like just summarizing it. If I had your job that you just had, which was we watched the Florida Project and it was about blah 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 blah, I wouldn't really know what to tell you. I could tell you some very, very basic and vague things, but in terms of like the actual story, like what actually happened, what it was about, I couldn't really articulate it, because all of the tools that I've been given in my life to articulate that type of thing don't apply here. Which leads me to my first question.
Oh my God! All right.
And I think this is going to be a really good jumping off point for the rest of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, you and I come from a fairly strict university theater education.
Sure. I agree.
We've learned in a way that you come into the classroom and the professor says, I'm going to need 100% buy-in from you on this thing that we're about to do. So you're going to have to absolutely commit, and out of it, you will learn a lot. But the danger that comes with that is that it's really hard for us to jump off that boat and onto other ones. That being said, this movie, specifically the writing, specifically the plot, just spits in the face of everything we've ever learned.
Okay, press on. What could you explain?
There is not a story. There's not there's not an arc traditionally. There's not a beginning, middle, end. There's not any real direction. In terms of the directing and the writing. In terms of the acting, there's very little objective. There is, but only maybe half the time. There's a lot of sitting and feelings. There's a lot of doing nothing. Like, genuinely doing nothing. And it's not like they're hiding it. It's not like this is some, like, just new form of that. Like, they, in interviews several times that I saw Sean Baker and all the actors, and he, like, most of the actors in the movie have never acted in a film before, by the way.
Yeah.
Every one of them has gone on record saying, there's no beginning, middle, end. There's not really any traditional thing. It's just people sitting around. We're just doing this for awareness because we want you to know about these types of people and the lives they lead without a story. Do you think it was effective? Do you think it was something that is maybe on the cusp of a new style of films that A24 has been producing a lot recently, because they've been producing a lot of movies just like this with no actual arc? Do you think that this is the future, or do you think that this is something that has been experimented with and should be moved on from?
Well, I mean, it is a slice of life film, and there are other films like it, but they don't reach like big popularity. Like, the only other slice of life film that like naturally comes to me at this very particular moment is Boyhood. But what makes Boyhood so interesting is because how it takes place over 12 actual years, like 12 physical human years. Like, that film took 12 years to film or something like that. So it's not a popular genre. So is this film going to be the sort of turnaround for that genre to be more popular? No, I don't think so. I don't think the film does enough in that regard. Even though I found the film to be incredibly effective in its own storytelling, because there were plenty of moments that I found, I don't want to say deeply disturbing, but like I was physically sick at some points. I just want to briefly compare this to the movie Parasite, which you it may sound like a weird comparison at first, but the reason is that like you feel this anxiety of the characters in Parasite because of the choices they make, obviously. But you look at that movie, and if you really think to yourself, like, this is such a crazy scenario, of course, that's what makes the movie so crazy in and of itself, but there's a sense of dissociation from it in terms of, like, the plot points in that film, particularly towards the end, while in this film, to me, even though it was fictional in its story, it felt so much more real that I kind of wish for more films like this. Like, not every story has to have this big plot, you know, not every story has to have, you know, this sense of beginning, middle, and end, right? I thought that this story was really well done because there was no beginning, middle, and end, and because we just take these moments in these individuals' day and we go, I don't know, like, the timeline in this film is probably like a week or 2 weeks, but I found it to be moving and disturbing, I guess I will use that word, but I think that was only possible because of the way the story was told.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, because I'm trying to think of because, yeah, it's fiction because it's not something that literally happened, but also there's like really no fictional elements, like
yeah, exactly,
that aren't totally possible and probably happen all the time.
The thought that crossed my mind while watching this film was there's a possibility that I know or like have known somebody who has been in this very similar scenario. Like, it feels very much so human for that reason. And this nuance of they're not a bad person, they just sometimes make the wrong choices. But that doesn't make them bad by any means, and you feel for them, but it's this sort of confusion of I like it's hard to describe who this person is.
Yeah. There was an essay that Sean Baker wrote on the movie.
Look at you pulling out this stuff.
Look, I'm trying. I'm trying out here because I really wanted to know what the thought was, because this guy,
right?
It's not like he just like threw some shit together. He's known for making movies just like this, where he finds a person that he finds interesting, or a character that he finds interesting, and he makes slice of life movies about them, and he usually makes them with like little to no budget. What he said, very similar to what you just said, is that this movie is about understanding. And and that the slice of life format is the best format for that type of movie. That every single slice of life movie that you're going to watch is going to have to be about understanding, because the only reason you're watching it is because you must be watching a person that you either feel bad for or don't understand. Which in this case, there's both. There's the person you feel bad for, which is the little girl, and her mom, which you don't understand. And you have to,
and you feel bad for the mother too. I want to make that very clear as well.
Yeah. But it is much easier to place blame on her, and you cannot place a single ounce of blame on the little girl.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there are a few times. There are actually a lot of times in the movie where you're like, where you know that something is coming, where like she's about to get in trouble, like the mom's about to get in trouble, or like she's like in trouble with the law, or like someone's talking to her or whatever, and you know that she's about to act up, or you know that she's about to screw it, and you're like, no, just comply. Just comply for a sec, and you'll be able to, like, succeed later, but, like, just don't screw it first, you know what I mean? Or, like, where she, like, starts, like freaking out, or, like, throwing things, or yelling at people, and you're like, yeah, you don't have to do that, please stop. Oh, and she's doing it now, shit. And, like, you totally understand, but it's just tough, a pill to swallow, because you're like, there's a way, but, like, yeah.
Because you see her physically dig that hole for herself.
Right, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's just, you're so close to being okay. Yeah. What did you, what did you think being from Florida? Was there, because you grew up, like, a couple minutes away from Disney, and these people are a couple minutes away from Disney. And, I mean, it's not necessarily the same area that you grew up in, but it is, like, maybe 10 minutes driving from your house, like, this could potentially be.
Yeah. The sort of tourism culture and how people in Orlando live their lives based around this culture, a lot of people from that city can relate to at that fundamental level. So yeah, the thought did cross my mind, like, okay, does this encapsulate the Florida / in this particular instance, the Orlando or Kissimmee experience? And so I thought to myself that the answer is yes and also no, which is such a weird take to have, and such a wishy-washy take. But I stand with it, because when you look at one individual go through their personal struggles in a particular situation that feels very real, and this movie goes for that slice of life approach where it's not trying to teach you a lesson, but it's trying to, like you said, grant this human understanding for this individual, regarding the mother, her child, and the manager at the hotel, and individuals around them. So I find that to be an accurate depiction of that experience, because it is their experience, and none of it felt outlandish. You know, even with something like Mooney, Jancy, and Scotty burning down Scooty, excuse me. Well, I should get fined for that. Burning down the old townhouses. That didn't feel outlandish. Like, it felt something very possible that could have happened, and they kind of sort of get away with it because, of course, but at the same time they don't. And of course, this is not everybody's experience in this particular location, but it is theirs, and I appreciate this movie for telling a story that I think should be told, because, of course, not everybody from Orlando, from Central Florida, is like me. Not everybody is like a lot of these people, but these stories should be told and should be shown, and this sort of humanity of how we're so capable of desperately trying to do the right thing, and yet at the same time doing the wrong thing left and right, I think is an incredible storytelling tactic, and it's impactful because it makes you, like, think to yourself that even though we make mistakes, that doesn't, make us bad, and even though other people make mistakes, that doesn't make them bad. But it's that sort of, where do we find redemption, I suppose, in those future actions. This is kind of, I kind of want to whip out the gold medal right now.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Because this segues into my gold medal, and I feel like this is a predictable gold medal, but for my gold medal, I want to give it to the individual who I felt gave a great performance, but I thought whose story was just so interesting because of where they played in the story of the mother and the daughter, and it's a bit of an easy choice because of how popular this person is, and you might have figured it out now, but it's Willem Dafoe's character who plays the manager, Bobby, and every time he's on screen, he just takes every scene away, especially the scene where we have the old man who's not from the motel come and start talking to the kids, so Willem Dafoe leads him away and the old man says, I'm just here for a soda. And so Willem Dafoe's like, okay, let's have you get that soda. And he gets the soda and he knocks it out of his hands and tells the old man never to come back again. Clearly being a predator in the middle of the day. Like, even the smaller scenes with him, it's easy to piece together that the guy helping him for 2 scenes is his son. It's, once again, I'm having trouble particularly articulating what this scene does so well, but you see this man trying and trying and trying again. And I love that. I don't know why, but I love characters that go to the deep end and maybe they don't come out. Well, who do you think is the gold medal for this film?
Ooh, that was deep, Danny. That was deep. Look at you. Go to the deep end and don't come out. I like that.
Oh my god,
we should get a shirt with that.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I honestly was trying to think about anyone that would get it besides Willem Dafoe, because I don't want to give the gold medal to the same person as you.
I want to make it clear.
There's
Can
really
we
no one else
agree
it
that
belongs to.
he was the best actor in this film, in terms of performance?
Well, yeah, he was the
yeah.
only actor in this film. He was like the only person that's like actually an actor.
I thought a lot of people did a great acting job, but like his performance was the best one.
I'm
in
sure
my
you
opinion.
do. Do you know how the main the mother got her role?
I found out briefly that Sean Baker found her on Instagram of all places. Is that right?
Yeah. He DM'd her on Instagram, and then they emailed about it, and they flew her out to Orlando. And the only reason they got her is because she actually is that person. And that's I mean, they didn't find the little girl on Instagram either, but she was a girl from Florida that they found and like used her friends and everything, which is perfect, because honestly, that I think that was the highlight. You know what? My gold medal's going to it's being split between every single kid in the movie. I've never seen. Oh, well, I guess I'm getting in my social serve.
Let's stick to the gold medal. Stick to the gold medal.
Stick to the gold medal. Okay. Willem Dafoe. I'll just give it to Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe was fantastic. He was, he was really good. He was clearly doing this movie because he was just excited about it, because it's a really weird and interesting thing. That was cool. All the interviews and everything after the fact, like the press stuff was really cool. Like watching Willem Dafoe talk about how he's like, this is just a cool movie to be a part of. And just how appreciative he was of all of it was cool. And also, like you said, my heart just fucking broke in two for this guy, because he wanted so like it was so hard watching him take personally something that was not his own personal hardships. And that's what made him so good at his job. But like, he would continuously, every time that anything bad happened to anyone in this entire fucking motel, he would take it personally, and you could see him internalize that and be like, I could have helped. I could have done something to help them, which is just so heartbreaking.
He carried this sense of guilt throughout the entirety of the film. And it was wrenching. It was wrenching.
He was really the only thing that like unified all of the stories and all the people, because like he was the only thing that like really connected everyone, because he was their manager.
And it doesn't. We're not necessarily saying like he made the right choice every step of the way, because he certainly, I don't think, didn't. And like he is a man full of faults. But I mean, but the screen presence of this dude, it's hard to deny it, and the weight that his character carried. And I, like I said, I don't mean this as a discredit to the actress whose name I'm going to mispronounce. So if you know the pronunciation, please correct me. Bria Vinate. God knows if I pronounce that right, as Haley.
It sounded like in the stuff that I saw, it sounded like she wanted the E afterwards, but like an It's like Vineta.
So Bria Vineta, please God, as Haley, like it just so happened that her character didn't happen to like carry the guilt, because that's how her character operated. And this is like, it's not a dig at her that Willem Dafoe's character Bobby was more interesting because he had that baggage, you know. But of course, her story is a lot more important to tell because of the baggage that she was forced to carry. Because it always felt like Willem Dafoe can get out of this situation, but it never felt like Haley, the character, could ever. But that sort of leads, I guess, to your sizzle serve, which we will serve, you know, in regards to the children, which we will serve after this word from our sponsors.
All right, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now, just let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch more. And third, now this is really important, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hear me when I say no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, welcome back to the Artenders with Danny and Max. So before break, we were talking about how the mother is carrying around the physical baggage, whereas Willem Dafoe is carrying around the emotional baggage. Now, I want to talk about the physical baggage for a sec, because, being the kids. We'll call them human beings instead of baggage. But
but we say baggage because that's a term that we use a lot in our craft.
Yeah.
So it's a utility word.
Yeah, you know? Right. It's purely functional as actors, and
not because we see children as baggage. I want to make that very clear.
You know, the devils. So let's call them what they are. Trash. It's going to lead into my sizzle serve. My sizzle serve is this. Even though, would I say this is the best thing we've consumed? Not even close. But I definitely will say,
I agree.
I have never, and you know that I'm interested in this topic because I've written about it. I've tried very hard to direct it in the past. I've been very interested in it, like in all the stuff that I've made. I've never quite seen something that has to do with children that I felt accurately depicts children.
Yeah.
That's so difficult to find. It's partially because children are a lot smarter and a lot more crass than people give them credit for.
Oh, yeah.
I loved, this is my favorite part of the movie maybe, I loved that things would happen around the children, and the adults would just assume that the children had no idea what was going on, and they weren't processing it, only to find out later that the kids have been listening the whole time, and understood everything that was happening the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, for instance...
is this your favorite scene?
It was maybe my favorite, maybe so, yeah. I hate saying it's my favorite scene just because it's so sad and disgusting.
Right.
Okay, well, here's the question. When did you realize that every single time that you were watching her in the bathtub with the radio on, every single time you were watching it, her mom was fucking a guy in the next room?
I had the hint of it at the very first one.
Yeah, that you were like, that's weird. I don't think you're... That's weird.
The movie kind of leads up to that here and there, particularly with... you wouldn't know this, and I wouldn't expect anybody to know this, but this is sort of word of mouth, and I personally cannot speak to the validity of what I'm about to say, but OBT, which they mention in like the first 20 minutes of the movie when Haley and Ashley go to OBT. OBT is Orange Blossom Trail. It's a sort of like club party strip, as well as word of mouth. I want to make that clear. So it's sort of reckless when I'm saying that it is also a spot for prostitutes to be at. I felt the movie going in that sort of direction. But so you were saying that, yeah, so for the first tub instance that we'll call it, when Mooney is in the tub and we don't see Haley and the music is on. So you were already putting together that Haley was soliciting with men.
Yeah. And specifically, I mean, the way that you see, because it's not as much. The clever thing about it is not as much that you watch it and you're like, oh, I know what's happening. It's that you see Mooney piecing it together, which is I think encapsulates really everything about the movie that's so interesting to me, is watching all the kids, and they're so random and they're so ridiculous, and they're always trying so hard to play and like be in this like fantasy world because they would rather not be in this one.
And that's what kids do as well.
Right. And that's so on the money, and I never actually see that. Either kids are too dumb, or their heads are too in the clouds, or their characters aren't interesting enough to be like dramatic pinnacles. And every one of the kids was awesome. But one thing that I think did bother me a little bit about that in the same regard is that I think I saw more of all the kids' backs than I saw their fronts. Does that make any sense?
I'm kind of, yes. Yeah. Could you speak on that more?
Like, I think that over half of me seeing them was listening to conversations they were having as they were walking somewhere. And every time they were walking somewhere, it was never a front shot. It was always a back shot.
Would you have preferred front shots?
Maybe. But also, like, I don't know, I kind of just wish that, I don't know, that I could have had...
Because I would like to speak on why I think the back shots may have been better than the front shots.
Please do.
Because for so much of this movie, we're forced to sort of confront and deal with and witness the world that Haley is living, the world that Bobby is living, the world that Ashley is living, the world that here and there the grandma is living and other individuals are living. And very rarely are we sort of forced to look at the world that the kids are living. But I mean, this is the world that the kids are living, but the kids have their own world, right? So if we get, this is just my thought, if we get these back shots on them consistently, then we're feeling distant from the kids, right? And even though we're hearing the kids and from their backs, we're seeing what they're doing, it feels like they're physically in their own space. They're physically in their own world, right?
And that we're not even invited.
Right, like we're just bearing witness to that, but nothing more, and we just happen to be there. We just happen to see it, as opposed to like we feel directly, like at the very end of the movie when Mooney is about to be taken away from Haley, and we get those like few shots of inside the room when Haley is yelling and the DCF people are there and the cops are inside too. We feel very much so in the middle of that. But we see so many instances where we don't feel in the middle of like the kids and what they're doing and the shit that's going on in their lives. I mean, and the shit that they're doing. But yeah, we're just happening to see it, and I think it speaks more to a child's experience because we feel so much on the outside of their own personal experience in their own personal worlds. So yeah,
man, that is a very interesting take, and I appreciate that. I take a lot.
But I mean, it's just an approach. Like it's not the right way, you know. But it is the way the movie did.
Yeah, there was something also interesting about that I think that you touched on a little bit, and I really liked it a lot. Is that we're not really invited into the kids' world for pretty much the entire movie, and then whenever we finally are, whenever we are finally able to see them on their level, and make eye contact with them at their level and see like a frontal shot, it is the very end of the movie, just like you said, whenever they switch all of a sudden from one camera to another, like they've shot the entire film in 35 millimeter, and then the last little segment, like whenever she decides
it's on an iPhone.
He's on an iPhone. That's fucking crazy. That's crazy town.
And you can tell immediately.
Oh yeah. Like the shaky cam, and it's not a recent iPhone. I'll tell you that
quality.
Much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think about? Did you laugh at all whenever it ended up like their haven was Disney World? Was it weird at all? Was it jarring? Or like being from Florida, are you like? I mean, that's really the place to go. If you're trying to be happy, that's where you'd run.
This leads into my sister.
Good.
And so, I'm still having it mull over in my head what I think of the ending. But I don't know if I'm on board with it per se. We see a lot of movies do this sort of approach that all of a sudden, like, we buy into the movie throughout, we buy into the film throughout the plot, throughout the process, and then all of a sudden the ending does something super jarring, and we're expected just to go along with it, or it's meant specifically to be so jarring that we're not. So the ending was really jarring, and so I understand the sort of approach that was happening. This camera shift, all of a sudden, we just see the kids running, and it's really just the kids running, and all of a sudden they're in Disney, and in Magic Kingdom, to be specific. I'm not entirely sure, honestly, if that was effective for the film. Like, why? Like, I guess this whole time for nearly 2 hours, we were forced to confront a pretty relatively grim reality for these individuals, and then in the end, it's a sort of dream sequence. It feels like. Because also from where they're located and running to Disney, that's a run. Like, that's not just, across the street, there's Disney. No. Like, that's a run. And then even the parking lot is ginormous, right? And of course, there's no reality that these kids can just enter the park without a guardian, without a ticket, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's no way this scene is reality. And it's further exacerbated by the fact it's filmed on an iPhone, of course, because, they couldn't get Disney's consent, so they just, did the scene in Magic Kingdom anyways. But I didn't find it to be effective, and I audibly said out loud, I quoted myself, "What the fuck?" Because it didn't feel like it belonged in the sort of story that the movie was trying to tell. Maybe it was kind of like all of a sudden we were finally invited in the kids' world, in their own imagination for that last instance. But this whole movie prior was not just about that,
Yes.
Like, is what are we supposed to take away? What did you think?
Well, what I keep coming back to, and what keeps making me upset, is that because I had the exact same response, and then I was like, why am I having this response? I really feel like I should be able to articulate why this is making me upset for some reason, why I want to so badly reject this ending from everything that you give me so far. And I think I keep coming back to this, is what you just said is, how does this fit into the story that I've been told so far? And my response to that is, what story?
Right.
I think it comes back to...
Is that a dig at the movie?
A little bit.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a dig at the form, partially because, like I said, we have a very strict education background. But it just bothers me because it's like, you were so close to getting away with it, and it's tough because there's not really an ending. The problem with not having a story, with not having a formal beginning, middle, end, without having something that we all recognize and we know the 3-act structure. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is that with those types of stories, in the first 5 minutes, you know when you're supposed to leave the theater. You know whenever the story's over, you're like, yes, I now have the answer to that question, or now I don't have to be worried about that thing anymore, or now I it's over, like whatever the journey was over, and you can be done with it. That's not how this movie works. So the only way they can really get out of the story eloquently, in a speedy way, is if they pull out something absolutely fucking crazy as like a huge gesture to show to you, all right, and this is where we're leaving it. Because they can't just be done. Because that's even worse. So they have to do something crazy, and the craziest thing they can do is, I guess, like, highlight the fact that, like, yeah, it's absurd that all these people are suffering and having a really hard time and having awful lives, and they're right next door to the like the happiest place on earth. Like, haha, that's crazy and funny, and like Orlando's so weird. But that's not really what the story's about, like you were saying, or what I felt like it was supposed to be about. So the second that you wrap it up with that, I'm just mad. Because I'm like, okay, so this was just you trying to get out of the movie because you didn't know how to end it.
That's what you felt from the ending.
Yeah, because then my problem was, I was like, oh, okay, cool, so I can disagree with him on what the ending was supposed to be. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, there's not really an ending to this movie. There's not really an ending that I can think of other than this. So I think this was a get out of jail free card. That they were like, I'm just going to hop out of the movie, and this is the best way I can do it.
Can we agree that this movie is not trying to teach a lesson?
Yes. Yeah.
And
because there's no call to action.
Yes. And we agree that this movie is largely about human understanding. Yeah?
Yeah. Like the best case scenario in terms of, because whenever you're a director, you have to think all the time about, like, what do I want the audience to think at this point? What do I want the audience to feel at this point? And the best case scenario for any moment in this movie is that someone could look at the story and say out loud, huh, interesting. That's the best. That's the best case scenario, which bothers me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you feel bad for them sometimes, but never to the point where you're, like, crying. I'm never like, oh, no. Because I'm never asked to invest emotionally ever, because I'm always so far away from all of them and from everything that's happening. So the best I can do is say, huh, interesting.
For me, but I also felt that I was brought closer to this movie because I was never asked to, like, emotionally invest, that because, like, I was this fly on the wall, and in some ways I couldn't do anything about it, you know?
True.
We're not as, I don't think, unless we are, and that's crazy, talented as Sean Baker. And we were obviously not put in the position that, he put himself in / others put him in. So I'm not trying to say, first of all, prefacing that we are better than Sean Baker, okay? But
No.
But with that being said, if we were to change the ending, Mac, how would you change the ending?
Oh, Danny.
Would you like for me to lead off?
Do you have an idea?
I think, honestly, that the movie should have ended with just with Mooney running away. Not even, like, making it to Jancy's place.
I'd so buy that.
Because all of a sudden, then the movie does really kind of, like, become, like, this is the lesson of the movie. And I'll speak on that in just a moment. But in that moment, right, like, Mooney really has to confront with the reality that she's living in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like, the ending before they switch cameras, it does a really good job of that all of a sudden, like, this reality is coming face first right into Mooney. And then all of a sudden she escapes reality again. So, like, the lesson, I guess, like, the lesson of the movie, even though this movie wasn't really ever trying to, like, give a lesson, the lesson of this movie would be that we can't escape reality, even if, like, we're children. We're at some point in our lives, we're going to be forced to confront something that we desperately try to run away from. And that is happening at the end, in those moments, with Mooney, with Haley, with Bobby. Like, these are realities that they try to desperately get away from, and they're forced to confront with. But I wish the movie would have had that sort of cold close of Mooney just running away. I think that would have been more effective in a sort of, like, shit, you know? I'm not entirely sure. I have to think on that more. But what were you gonna say? What were you thinking?
Yeah, to add on that, there's another very clever tool that a lot of writers use, and I'm guilty of it. But it is another get out of jail free card, where it's a very easy way to wrap things up in a very sad way, in a way that makes you feel uneasy, in the same way that this movie made us feel the whole time. It was just kind of uneasy, and it's a great tool because you don't even necessarily need a story, just like this movie, to use it. And that is it's especially useful because it's a slice of life movie, which is the whole quote unquote life is cyclical ending. So if we would have seen Mooney run away, but show that she was going to leave to start a life that is the exact same one as Haley, that would have been sad. So like if we saw her like run and everything, and then all of a sudden like there's like a running montage or some shit, and then it like fades into like clearly time has passed. She goes up to someone and is like, "Hey, I'm sorry, like right. I lost my mom. Like, could you go and like she's like in one of those nice hotels. She's like, I lost my mom. Could you go and tell some like where's the telephone?" And then they're like, "Oh, I'll go talk to someone." And they go off and talk to someone, and she steals money from the lady like because she left her purse, and then she gets on a bus and leaves. Like clearly, like she's not a part of the mom anymore, but she's pulling scams in the same way that Haley did. She's going to now run away and lead the exact same type of life.
You're not gonna like my take. I think I would have preferred that ending less than the original ending.
Oh, because it's more sad?
No, because you said it yourself. It's more cyclical. It's more predictable, right?
Yeah.
Life
is more complete because the other ending doesn't even do anything.
But I'm gonna say it that I think now we're debating our theoretical endings for a movie that we had absolutely no hand in.
We're now just making the movie.
But I think the ending that I stated would have encapsulated the human understanding more because it's this treading into the unknown. That is what life is every day. Every day is an unknown situation. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? But to if we saw the physical running away of Mooney and then like full stop, like I think that would lead to more questions, but I think really good questions as to like as something as simple as like, are they going to get her, to something as more I guess nuanced, of not really nuanced but more interesting, let's just say, as like, is she actually successfully going to run away? Where is she going? Is she going to run in front of a car? Like, but the sort of she's running and she doesn't know why, and I don't think we should know why either.
I will say I did straight up think that she was gonna die whenever she like
the thought did cross my mind.
To
yeah.
Chansey's, I was like, well, because also they always had that fucking helicopter thing, and I was like, okay, there's got to be some symbolism there. There's got to be some foreshadowing there because, and it just didn't pay off. And I was like, I thought she was gonna like get like hit by a fucking helicopter or something. Like I had no idea. I was like, what? Why do I keep getting this fucking helicopter thing?
You know what's funny? Because I knew the helicopter wasn't going to be some plot relevant thing, because that's just what happens in a lot of parts of Orlando and Central Florida. I just knew
hate that. That's so funny.
I knew that it wasn't going to be important, and so it was not like Chekhov's gun or anything like that. I just knew that like this is just something that happens.
Helicopters were going, and you were just like, home.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. I
That's
knew.
So funny.
I knew if they actually incorporated the helicopter in some way, I'm like, okay, now this is absurd.
So similar to OCT, this is just a Floridian joke.
OBT,
my bad. OBT.
It's a Central Florida thing. You know, you're in the know.
That's so funny, man. I think that the primary problem with the ending that I had was that it implied that the story was about Mooney whenever she never really did anything. She was just asked to be around things that happened. And so I wish that the ending did something that forced her to, just like you said, confront anything.
Yeah.
Because she never really did.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that is what is different about the other ending, the real ending that we are trying to fix.
Yeah.
So, maybe last question here.
Okay.
As an actor,
right,
you have a tool bag. You have a bag of tools that you use whenever you go about exploring character or rehearsing. Because you like to try different tactics in order to get things, and so you have a big old tool bag. Was there anything in this movie that you would like to try to add to your tool bag? Was there anything that you were like, you know what, that's interesting, I might want to try that?
What an interesting question.
I was thinking about that like yesterday as I was watching, and I was like, huh, we should ask that a little more often. Like whenever we're watching stuff, like I think that should be something that we potentially add.
Like going beyond the observing and so like asking the question, how can we transition this into application?
Yeah, is there anything that you will be taking and trying?
Well, one thing, as I mentioned earlier, that was really interesting to me of note was the foil that Haley was to Bobby. That Haley, she had a lot more difficult problems, I would say, that she had to confront with, but figuratively speaking, she was always running away, right? And so many of the times she found the actress too. The actress did a wonderful job. Found the beauty in the moment, that even though like her life in moments would be in such shambles, like she would have her daughter to lean on, and this constant, like, it's not necessarily denying what's going on, but it's like acknowledging, okay, this is happening, but I'm going to focus so much more on something that's really, really, really important to me. And so like being trained as a stage actor, and I'm still trying to like work on this here and there too, is just like, you don't have to treat the audience like idiots, obviously.
That was honestly gonna be mine. That was gonna be mine.
That like you can just trust. And like I said, this is still something that I'm working on, and it's always going to be something that I'm working on. You can just trust the text. You can just trust like your given circumstances. You can just trust what is important to your character then and now, and you don't have to necessarily quote unquote play the obstacles, right? You don't have to play those at all. You can acknowledge them and don't ignore them, but like, how do you work around them, as opposed to like, this is an obstacle. You see this obstacle? I'm playing with this obstacle. And that's a big thing for me as an actor that I took away from this film.
Yeah. You know the phrase, the first impression lasts 7 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole theory that like in the first 7 seconds that someone sees you, they already know enough to make a judgment on you. Whether that judgment changes or not, they already have one made.
Right.
There's a certain confidence that comes with not showing your homework. That's always something that I've been so bad about, is that like if I try really hard to put together a character or something like that I'm very bad about like, here's the work that I've done, instead of just like letting it be.
You just gotta know it. Yeah, which is so much easier said than done.
So so in the same way that you have to trust the audience, you have to know that the audience wants to trust you in the first 7 seconds. And there's a confidence that gives you that gives you in the first 7 seconds of being on stage or being on screen, that there's a clear difference between an actor that trusts that the audience trusts them and doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there was so much of that from the director, writer, actors, everyone was aware that some people would get some things and some people would get other things, and that as long as all their decisions were informed, they didn't have to tell you why they were informed. You'd just understand. And we all did. We both did clearly understand a lot.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. I totally agree with you there, and we should definitely take that forward.
Are your final thoughts of this film?
I think it's excellent. I think it's really interesting. I think that a lot of people that are especially artists should consume it, because it is something that's so new. Also because it's an A24 film. We could do a whole other podcast on just on the A24 company and how this was such an A24. This was such an A24 film, and it's like a little indie art house-ness. But
right.
I think that all artists, especially filmmakers and theater makers, should definitely watch this because it's a new thing. It's a new thing, and it's one of the best attempts I've seen at a new thing. And if we want to get acclimated to it and keep learning, this is the next step.
Nice.
What about you?
I mean, I enjoyed it. Yeah. I would not put this as the best thing that we've seen, but it's the one of the most interesting things I've ever seen. Period. Partially because of how difficult it is to articulate like how much I actually enjoyed the film. Mostly because it is a character study on unique individuals and individuals going through hard times and not necessarily always doing the right thing. And like I said 20 times, that doesn't make them bad people. That just makes them people. But I do think it's a film worth seeing. I wouldn't put it too high on a sort of priority list, but like if you got 2 hours to kill and you want to see a human experience, then I think this movie is fantastic for that.
Okay, here's one. This is maybe the best airplane movie I can think of. If you're on an airplane, this is the first one you should go to. Does that make any sense at all?
Excellent take.
I know it's weird, but like in my mind, that is the best place to watch this movie. So wait till you're on a flight, rent the movie, don't do HD, just do SD on YouTube, and knock it out.
What are we viewing next week, Mac?
Oh, baby, you know what we're viewing next week. Do you have any guesses?
You can't just say we know what we're viewing,
what did we
and
view
then do
last
you have any
week?
guesses?
What did we view last week?
We viewed the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Well, what do you think we're viewing next week?
I suppose we're viewing season 2 of Avatar:
Yes, that's exactly right.
And you know what? I will say, I was like, man, hopefully we can do like the second season too. I kind of want to keep watching the show. It's like it's solid. It's solid stuff.
Right. And you know what is exciting? It gets better. And I'm so confident in that I'm able to actually say to you it gets better, and I don't think that's going to weigh on you in any specific way. I think that you're going to enjoy it no matter how much I hype it.
Hallelujah. All right.
Hallelujah indeed.
Well, thank you very much, Mac, for joining me. And see you next week.
Yes, sir.